Today's guest is Melissa Case. Melissa, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Melissa is a survivor she was a child of an abusive father who was an addict. She also survived a traumatic car accident, and she was also a veteran for 10 years. So Melissa has been through some things, and she's here to tell us about it. So Melissa is an alternative education teacher, and so she has obviously used some of her life experience to now help students who are at risk. So I'm really excited to hear your story, though parts of it I'm sure will be kind of hard to talk about.
Oh, yeah, for
but,
sure.
Yeah, it's good for us to hear. So why don't we start by having you tell us just a little bit about your job? What do you do at your alternative school?
So right now, of course, it's summer, so I'm having a break. But when we come back, I teach kids that have left mainstream school for whatever reason. Sometimes they come to alternative education because they have anxiety, because they have trouble focusing. So it's not just a bad kid stigma. Like, there's lots of different kids that go to alternative education, and I basically facilitate classroom assignments, management, lots of social emotional learning and things like that.
Well, and I just know from being a teacher myself in a mainstream classroom with the challenges I have, I think it takes a special type of person to do your job, and it's a very important job. So I thank you for that.
Thank you.
Let's go back now and go ahead and talk about your childhood and your experience being raised with your father, the way he was.
So, the beginning of my childhood was really great. My parents were fun. We always played. We had, really good childhood. It was about until I was 10 to 12 that I started noticing that my dad was a little bit off. And he would be, stay up really late, sleep a lot. He lost his job mysteriously. So that was kind of like a turning point in my life when my dad had lost his job. He was the manager of a supermarket. And he started drinking a lot then. And he had drank before, but it had never been scary. It had always been super fun. We would have friends come over every weekend. My parents were very social, and we were always around our cousins. So we had a really tight-knit group. Well, when my dad lost that job at the grocery store, that group fell apart. And different parts of the friends that we grew up with were no longer hanging out with us. And it was hard as a child, why all of a sudden we couldn't hang out with these people that we hung out with all the time.
I'm sure you just didn't even understand.
Yeah, and these were people that my parents had been friends with from high school. My parents were young; they were in their 20s. My mom was 20 when she had me, so she's and it was the 80s, so it was a little bit more loose then. But yeah, it was about middle school is when things really started changing, and I started noticing that the drugs had really taken over my dad.
Okay.
We would come home from school, and he would just already be completely hammered or on drugs or whatever it was. One day I'd come home from school, and my sister was probably 10 and I was about 12. And my dad was stumbling in from the neighbor's house. And he was bleeding, and he was just kind of stumbling around, and I was like, what? I thought he got hit by a car because we lived out in the country. And so when our animals had gotten hit by a car, you know how you're kind of just dazed, and he was bleeding. So I was like, oh, maybe he got hit by a car. So I was very what's going on? And he was super angry. And so couldn't understand him because he was mumbling. And so I knew something was wrong. Yeah. So I grabbed my sister and I hid her in my closet.
Yeah.
And I was going to go to the neighbor's house and see hey, there's something wrong with my dad.
Yeah.
So I had ran over to the neighbor's house. Well, that's who he was doing drugs with and getting drunk with. So they were all messed up.
And how old were you again?
I was about 12.
Okay.
So I was old enough, not old enough, I should say, but knew what was going on at this point.
Yeah.
So I'd come home and I was trying to talk to my dad because he was just like mumbling and stumbling, and he got a knife and he started chasing me with it and was yelling at me. And I had to jump out my bedroom window, which we lived in a double wide mobile home at the time. So those are a little bit high.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
I called my mom and let her know what happened. And of course she sent my uncles over right away, and we left that day.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the final straw that got my mom to leave my dad.
Good for your mom for having the courage
Yeah,
to
and
do
my
that.
mom is awesome. She is the best. Like, she took care of us so well. Like, being a single mom, living with very little income, no help from her, baby daddy.
Yeah.
And it's just...
What a trooper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was kind of
my
how it all started.
An unstable childhood for sure.
Yes.
So let's go ahead and talk about high school. You want to talk about
high school
years a little?
So, junior high was kind of rough. My dad was in and out of my life all through high school. I was not a scholar. Okay. I did not like going to school. I liked school because I was social. I was very, very social. I got along with everybody, and, that's what school was about for me. It was
for a lot of kids.
Yeah, just coming to school, hanging out with your friends, and maybe writing your name on something.
Yeah.
So I totally, get the kids that I'm teaching, like, hey, I was you. I understand. Yes. I also decided to join the military when I was really young. Mm-hmm. So in high school, my mindset was like, well, I'm just going in the military anyway, so why do I need any of this? Like, not thinking any way past that, because I was the smartest person alive, when you're in high school.
Of course.
So, yes.
Okay, so I actually think it's so important that you brought that up, because here you were, this kid that really looked like you weren't going to do a whole lot with yourself. I'm not saying going into the military is something, but in terms of like academically, and then here you are now an educator. So, wow. How did you get from there to where you are now?
That's really a wonder. It really is. Like, how, if you would have told me when I was in high school that I would be an educator, I would have laughed, because that was nowhere, even 7 years ago. It was nowhere in my sights that I was going to work in education. It kind of fell into my lap. When I got out of the military, I have a lot of injuries from the military. So I wanted to be an EMT, like a paramedic was what I've always wanted to be. I, for some reason, always stumble upon car accidents. Like, I'm always the first person there.
Wow.
It's weird. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah. So you're like, maybe I could get trained and help these people.
Yeah. So, and which I have some training, some medic training from the military, but, so I decided to be a paramedic. Well, with my injuries, I really had to look at myself and be like, what am I going to do long term? Because being an EMT is physically, it's a lot. And I have a lot of medical issues. Yeah. So then I was like, I'll go into psychology. Like, I'll be able to help people, and
but you just wanted a job where you could help people, huh?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to help people. Yeah. So I went and got my bachelor's in behavioral science, and went through school, did all that. So I started working for Youth for Change, realized I really liked working with teenagers, and decided that social work was really busy. It is a lot. It's 24/7. And I have lupus.
Oh my goodness.
So it makes me very tired. And I decided that maybe social work, and I needed somewhere, because the summers is when I have like the most symptoms of it, that I needed to work in the school system, because I could have summers off and I could have breaks, and I wasn't going to be overworked, and my caseload wasn't going to be that bad, and all that. And it's funny, because I was just going as like a behavioral analyst. I was going to be a board certified behavioral analyst. That's the BCBA program. And then I started working at Centennial.
Okay.
And then that's when Jillian was like, you need to be a teacher. You've got. And so that's kind of how I was like, I never thought of it before.
Wow.
Let me just look. And I could get my schooling paid through the VA.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Good for you. Well, you persevered. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, it was a long journey here, but I made it, and here I am.
Yes. So now, do you feel like you've covered some of the major sections of your life where things were especially hard? Is there anything else?
There is a lot of trauma that I have, like from being. I just don't know like how much, because of course I was a female in the military, so there's some trauma with that, not as in anything really bad, but there's trauma with that. I was married to an abusive husband.
Okay.
When I got married, I was 19, he was 30.
Wow.
And so that was, when they say age doesn't matter, it kind of does in that aspect, because I was so new and naive, and I had just gone through a traumatic event in my life.
Yeah.
And he was already established, so it was like very alluring to a young person.
Yes, I could see that.
But he was very manipulative and very controlling. So
okay. Wow. So I think you've done a great job of just sort of giving us a summary, kind of an overview, going into some of the situations in a little bit more depth. I would love to hear now a little bit about how you survived all of this. I can tell you just from listening to you that you are someone who has a very strong will to survive. You persevere. You don't give up.
No.
And so what else can you tell me? What are some coping skills, or what helped you, or who helped you?
I have a really good village. So thankfully, I've had the same friends since I was in second grade. The town that I grew up in, Biggs, and that town's really close. Like, I knew all the kids in my school. We were all friends. I still know them. I still follow a lot of them on social media. Yeah. Thank you. I think that just when I was younger, I always would say, like, I'm either going to find a way or make one. And
that's a great saying.
That's what I've always done. It's like, okay, I'm either going to find the way or I'm going to have to make one. And nobody really wants to make a way because it's very hard.
Yes.
But if you're looking, you will find a way.
I believe that so much. I've seen that in my own life. I've struggled some with my own mental health, and I have been determined to find ways to move through it and keep myself grounded. And it's that determination, the will to pick yourself up when you're down, that really makes the difference, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's just, realizing that there's somebody that's always worse off than you too.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think, knowing that if I don't take care of this now, it's going to be worse for me later. But I'm a huge procrastinator, though. Yeah. But I always wait until that very last minute, and then I get it done. But there's times where I have crossed that line. But, I struggle with my mental health still. Like, I'll have days where I'm like, I'm just too tired. Or, I have to pep talk myself, like, okay, we're going to go out. We're going to grocery shop, like, even though it's something so easy and you deal with kids, or like when you get home from work, you're like, all right, nobody asked me any questions, because I've been answering questions all day. Like, we're having cereal for dinner. So that's how we're coping today.
Coping skills too, the pep talks, and also the allowing yourself to have that downtime, and sort of those boundaries and protection of yourself, and knowing when you need that. Because we all need to replenish, and we all need that downtime, I think.
Oh, for sure. And I think I'm also really busy with my son. He plays every sport. So we're like constantly doing something that has to do with sports. And I never thought I would be a sports mom, because I'm kind of more alternative, I would think. So that's been a whole transition for me, is like being a sports mom and like getting into sports because I never really did.
Right.
I was more of like the skater stoner kid growing up, not the athlete.
Yeah.
So it's.
And how old is your son?
He's 13.
Okay.
So he's at that great age right now where he can do things on his own. So when I say it's cereal night, he's down. So luckily,
sounds like you have a good relationship.
Oh yeah, he's a good kid too. Yeah. Man, he's a good kid.
So you, I know your father made things really hard for you, but here you are being a mom, good mom to this son, you know, and not repeating.
I definitely didn't do a lot of things in my life because I saw what it did to my father.
Yes.
And, you know, and I'm pretty open with my students too, you know, I'll be like, my father's a meth addict. If you want to hear like some of the voicemails that he used to leave, he passed away earlier this year or earlier this summer.
Okay.
So,
sorry to hear
that was kind of like, I'm not really sure how to feel about it yet.
I'll bet that's hard.
So
yeah, just kind of giving it some time.
But he had a stroke about a year ago, and that's when we started to have to take care of him again, because when your parent has a stroke, they just expect the kids to take care of them.
Yeah.
Well, when you don't have a relationship with your children, your kids are still expected to take care of you.
Oh, wow.
And so the nursing homes and things like that were like, you know, you need to come take care of your dad.
Wow.
And we're like, well, we don't really know him. Like, what do we do? So, so that was.
So I think it is good to be open with your students about, you know, what you went through. And I think that can help them also. I just know when they see you and here you are an adult who is taking care of yourself and providing for yourself and doing some good in the world. I think it's really important for them to see that and to know where you came from.
Yeah, and I'm very open if they ask me questions, you know, like what my past is or, you know, even where I plan to go with my future. Like, I feel working in alternative education, you have to be you, like genuinely you. Oh. And you cannot lie to these kids because
they'll know it in a second.
They catch
they
it
can
so fast.
It's very
so,
true.
You know, I just, when they ask me questions, I'm just truthful with them. And that's all that vague. Sometimes vague.
Sometimes. You gotta use some discretion there. But
for the most part, you know, and I just tell them, like, you're going to have these ups and downs your whole life. Like, every chapter of my life, there's been a struggle. Yeah. But it's gotten me through to a better chapter each time. And here I am. So.
Yes. Okay, so you talked about a village. You have this great support because these friendships that you've had for a long time, which is so wonderful. Anything else? Do you do any daily things that help you? Do you have hobbies? Or
So I am a huge plant lover. If you ask any of my students, if you ask them what I love, they will say plants and my dogs. Because I have 2 Rottweilers that are my world. They're my babies. And then plants. I have a lot of house plants. Nice. I fell into the house plant trap of 2020.
Okay. Yes.
So and I'm just deep in it now. I live in a forest. Okay. I have like 200 house plants.
Can't stop.
I can't. I love them. And you know, I've gotten
it's a great
deep.
Thing to be addicted
I've
to.
gotten deep into it. Like, I'm importing from Thailand plants.
Nice.
I'm at a co-op. Like, we're at a serious group about this. But plants help a lot. The group within, like, the community of plant ladies or people, I should say, because there's lots of guys too are in it. They help out a lot too, because we talk a lot, not just about plants. Okay. So
nice. That's nice to have a community that has a common thing that you love.
Yeah.
And then you can also connect in other
ways. And then
ways.
you find that, you know, when you have this common thing you love, there's a lot of outer things that are the same. Like, oh, you love this too? Oh, me too. Okay. Yes. Oh, we're so alike, you know? So it just builds that bond stronger. Yes. Because you have so many areas that you're like.
I think finding ways to find connections with other people is really important to our healing and our mental health. Just helps us not feel so alone. And then also the dog thing. I love that you have your dogs.
Yes.
Of course, you know, anytime I'm feeling down, I go find my dog. I mean, dogs just love you no matter what.
Oh, yeah. My dogs are A lot. They're
a lot of energy, huh?
oh yeah, they are full of energy. I always say they're just like my students, you know.
Yeah.
They just we don't know their traumas. Like they're funny though.
Yeah.
They're funny dogs, and they definitely keep me on my toes. It's like having toddlers. My one Rottweiler is 4 years old, and then I have an 8-month.
Okay. Yep.
So I've been busy this summer.
And I know also you had mentioned that you like to draw.
Yes,
and that's
I do.
Therapeutic for you as well.
Yeah, I like to paint rocks.
Oh, neat.
So I'll paint rocks, and I didn't know that I was artistic until I started painting rocks.
Wow.
And I could look at a picture and I could draw it on the rock. Like I can't draw it on paper.
Wow.
But for some reason, when it comes to a rock, and I don't know if that's just a mental block or something, but I'm really good at painting rocks.
That is so cool.
And I'm teaching art at Centennial, so it's like
that all works out.
I'm like, let's paint some rocks today.
I love it. And I bet the kids love that.
Yes, they do.
I just think we all need something to go to when our minds won't stop at it. I mean, my mind sometimes just will not stop, and it just driving me crazy. And to have something to go to get your hands busy and to do, I think is really a great coping strategy.
Yeah, especially when it's something that you didn't know that you could do.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my gosh, I can draw. It's like when your taste buds change, like every 7 years, you're like, I hate Brussels sprouts. And all of a sudden you taste them like oh my God, I love these. So
yeah, and who knows what other talents you'll find that you have.
I know, you learn something new.
Yeah.
Literally, I'm 40 years old, and I just learned I could draw. So
I love that.
I didn't know that.
All right. Well, you are such an inspiration, Melissa.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for being here. Is there anything, as we're closing up here, is there anything that you'd like to say to the viewers? Any advice you would give them if they're struggling?
The best advice that I could just give anybody is, you know, life is hard, and you do need to pick yourself up, pull on your bootstraps, and just make a way if you can't find one. We're all out here struggling. Lean on your family, your friends, and just find a person that you can relate with.
Yeah.
I think is the biggest.
That was wonderful advice. Well, thanks again so much for being here. I'm sure that you've shared lots of things that can help people who are struggling with similar issues.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Take care. If you'd like to hear more podcasts like these, visit our website, speakbravely.com, and access our Listener's Corner. And if you have a survival story to share, we would love to hear from you. Just visit our website, speakbravely.com, and submit an interview request. We also welcome videos, written narratives, and spoken word poetry. I've linked our website in the notes below. Until then, take care of yourselves, and may peace and healing be with you.